In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a ponytail scrub cap that is reversible. This is in response to a couple of requests that I got in the comments. Thank you all for continuing to comment and ask questions. I love being able to help you out in any way that I can. This tutorial is based on the ponytail scrub cap video that I've already posted. And if you need more detailed instructions on the pattern pieces themselves, how to cut them and so on, you can refer back to that ponytail video. And this pattern is available for free in the description below. You can follow the link to my PDFs. In the description section, you will also find links to my other scrub caps. There's a tutorial for the standard cap with no elastic. However, if you want to add elastic in the back, like shown here, you can do that for a more snug fit. There is the one that is medium to long hair that is not a ponytail style, and there's also the regular ponytail style, which is the same as this one, just not reversible. Also, if you have any comments or anything that you'd like me to put together, feel free to leave that in the comment section below as well. What you want to do is take those pattern pieces and cut out two scrub caps. One is perhaps lining and one is the print, or one is a solid and one is a print. Whatever two fabrics you want to use, you're going to cut one cap top and cap side of one of the fabrics and a cap top and cap side of the other fabric. And then choose whichever of the two prints you want to use as the headband, because this one will show no matter what side you're wearing. So I've chosen this print for my headband, and I've gone ahead and cut my headband and tie out of that fabric. The other thing that I also did that I did not show in the other video is that you do want to reinforce, and you'll see this in the pattern pieces themselves, you want to reinforce at the notch on the cap side pieces, the notch on the side. I've gone ahead and reinforced those on the wrong side of the fabric with about an inch square of fusible interfacing. And as you'll see in the other video, that's because when we go to attach the headband and the elastic on the end of this, we do snip this fabric, so there is a lot of stress that's placed here. I did that on both pieces. I also ironed my pieces because once I start assembling the cap, it's going to be harder to iron it. Although the steps are very similar to the regular ponytail cap, the order in which to do them is going to be different. For the reversible one, the first thing that you want to do is to join the cap side at center back. And you're going to do that with right sides together for both caps. So whatever you do to one, you're going to do to the other. Right sides together, you're going to join here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then press it towards one of the two sides. Once you have sewn the center backs of the cap sides, attach them to your tops. So you're going to take each one of them and flip right side out. Take your cap top with the right sides together, match the center front notch to the center front notch of your cap side. I like to start at center front to make sure that they are aligned, and I sew all the way through, matching notches. Keep going. Match the next notch. Keep going. And I'm going to match the notches at center back. Now, if you need to pull on one piece more than the other to make sure that they align, you can do that. If you need to pin it, whatever is more comfortable for you. I usually just freehand it. There's the other notch, one last notch before you come back around to center front. And you will do this again for both caps. So I've gone ahead and joined my cap sides to my cap top. But before you do yours, there are two things I wanted to mention. Number one is that out of habit, I went ahead and finished the center back of my cap side with an overlock, but that's actually not necessary when you are lining or doing a reversible cap because the seams will be hidden. Also, when you go to press your seams for the center back sides, make sure that you press them in opposite directions. meaning press one towards the left like this one and one towards the right, because when you go to join them together you want them both facing the same way so that when you thread the elastic through it doesn't get caught in either of the seams. The next step is to press the seams towards the sides on both of them. Once I press them, I'm going to take my machine and top stitch very close to the seam all the way around the cap on both caps. What you want to do next is to take both of your caps and put them right sides together, matching the center backs. Line them up and stitch them together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to take it from one notch all the way to the other, and this is the part that I reinforced with the fusible interfacing. You're going to stitch all the way along, past center back until you meet the other notch, and you'll stop there. So now our caps are joined together in the back with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The next step is to go to where that seam starts, and you're going to clip it up to the seam without actually cutting the thread. So you're going to separate the back from where you're going to attach the headband. Try to go as close to the seam without actually cutting the thread. And you're going to do that on both sides. Go to this side, and this is why we reinforced this area, so that with the added stress it doesn't rip with use. Then once you've done that, you're going to open up your two caps and you're going to press the seam to either side. Take the iron and just press flat so it's nice and smooth. And here are the two caps ironed together. And what you want to do now is to fold along that seam so that you can stitch the casing in place. You're going to leave it open on both ends so this part does not get affected. You're going to start about a 1/4 inch and a little bit. I'm using a 1/4 inch elastic, so I want to make sure that the casing is just big enough for the elastic. So do it a hair wider than the elastic width. So start here, backstitch, leave this open so I can thread the elastic. Start here and sew all along the back, making sure that I am folding along the seam. And here again, backstitch, also leaving this side open so that I can finish threading my elastic. Once you've stitched the casing in place, it's time to insert your elastic. Now remember that I told you that the seams for center back should be pressed so that they both end up facing the same way. I'm going to show you the inside so that you can see which side mine are facing. They're both going this way, which means that I'm going to thread my elastic in the same direction, otherwise it will get caught if I go in the opposite direction. So you want to start on this side. Of course, if you press them the other way, you would start at the bottom. So I'm going to start here. Remember that this is open still. I'm using 3.5 inches in length of a 1/4 inch wide elastic. In my original video, I used 4 inches, but I found that 3.5 actually gives me an even tighter gather in the back, and I prefer that. But 4 inches will work just fine too, if that's what you want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and start threading here. Once I get to the end of my elastic, I want to be careful that I don't lose it inside of the casing. So there it is. I'm going to pull until it's just inside and I can still see the tip of it. I don't want it to be so far in that it's gone and I can't catch it with my zigzag. There it is. You can see the head sticking out. And at this point I'm going to use my zigzag stitch to secure the elastic in place before I go any further. Here's my zigzag stitch, and again make sure that enough of the elastic is sticking out so that when you place your zigzag, you're not just catching the very end, but you are catching with enough elastic sticking out so that it doesn't snap out of place with use. I'm going to finish threading and take it out on the other side. Once it comes out on the other end, you're going to very carefully remove the safety pin and make sure that you don't lose the elastic inside the casing in the process. And you're going to retract the elastic until again a little bit is showing, and then you will zigzag that in place to secure this end as well. I've now zigzagged this end and I'm going to redistribute my elastic. That looks very nice. So the last step is to now attach the headband to the cap. You're going to treat both caps as one, and you're going to choose one of the two sides to be the wrong side and the other to be the right side. My favorite of the two prints is this one, so I'm going to call this my right side. So as I've done in the other videos that I've posted, I'm going to find my center front notch and line that to my headband center front notch. Right sides both facing up. This is a headband again that I've chosen. So notch the center front of your headband. This is the wrong side, this is the right side. So with my right side facing up and the notch at the top, match the notches at center front. Again, I'm calling this my right side, so right sides both facing up. I'm going to match at center front and take all 3 layers to stitch them together. I can guide my fingers to where the raw edge of the cap is, and right here where my elastic casing ended and my headband would start, I'm going to stitch there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance from that point through center front and all the way to the other side, making sure that all of my 3 layers, the 2 caps and the headband tie, are lined up. Now, because the headband is a straight band, this center front notch is just a reference point. If you get to this point when you're sewing and it's a little bit off in either direction from the 2 caps, that's okay because it's just a straight strip of fabric. But you do want to make sure that both caps are matched at center front. So if you don't feel confident that that will happen in your case, you can always baste either by machine or by hand your 2 caps together within the 1/4 inch margin. So that's your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and somewhere between the 1/4 and the edge you can just baste with machine or by hand to make sure that these 2 layers are together all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and stitch my headband to my cap side. Now when you stitch your cap, make sure that you go right up to where you put your casing. So I actually went maybe a stitch past that joint. You don't want to leave any raw edges. This is my stitch seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way through, and again on this side I went right up to the edge and maybe 1 stitch over. And at this point you want to open and separate your headband from the cap side, and you want to press your seams towards your headband. I do this on this side, lay it on my ironing board and press my seams with my iron out. And at the same time I also press a 1/4 inch seam allowance all along the headband, both here and at the bottom as well, all along the whole length of the headband, a 1/4 inch all the way to make it easier for sewing. If you try to just fold the headband as you go when you're stitching, you might stretch it and not align it properly. So I have learned that it is better to just take the extra few minutes and just press all along a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. Once you've ironed your seam allowances a 1/4 inch up all the way, including the end, if it's raw edge. In my case, one of them was a selvage, so I didn't have to iron it. I'm just going to leave it raw because it won't fray. But this side will because it's been cut. So I folded it and pressed it. Once you've done that, you want to go ahead and close your headband. Now, I find that the easiest way to do this is to have the cap on the right side in the machine and the headband on the left. So I start up here, I fold it, and I'm going to backstitch and stitch, then pivot and keep going. When I get to here, the reason I like the cap on the right side is so that I can see my original seam. And now I can fold over and cover that seam and stitch right along. So go right up to that previous seam and stitch all the way along. When you get to the end, make sure again that you have covered your seam at the very corner and also that you haven't caught the elastic casing in the process. Then just close all the way, remembering to backstitch when you get to the end. Once I stitch my headband closed, I always like to press it to give the cap a nice clean finish. So this is the finished cap. This is the other side, what would be either the coordinating fabric, like in this case, or lining if you wanted to do that instead. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial and that you go ahead and subscribe so that you get notified when I have uploaded new videos.